I'm Kez, and this is my dad, Nikki.
Hello.
This week, we're going to be exploring food, and we're going to teach you all about making your own compost. So we know it can be quite difficult to get compost in the shops at the moment, but we're going to learn today why it's always better to make your own compost at home.
Yeah, I always make my own compost. It's so easy to make compost, and then to make the compost mixes that you want by mixing your own homemade compost with some molehill soil or just soil out of the garden and some sand. It's very, very simple to do that.
Brilliant. And why else should we be making our own compost? Is it better for the environment?
Well, unfortunately, most of the compost that you buy are full of peat. They've got a lot of peat. So they'll always have a little slidey scale on the back of the bag, which says how much peat's in there. But we don't want to be using any peat because we're basically mining a finite resource to all intents and purposes, because it's so slow to make new peat bogs. And in the meantime, those peat bogs are sequestering carbon, they're holding on to huge amounts of water, and they're a unique habitat in their own right, full of unusual plants and animals.
Okay, so we know now that we shouldn't be using peat, and that using things from our own garden and things from our own houses can make much better compost that's easy for us to use and uses up products that would otherwise just become waste. So how do we make compost then, Dad?
Most people try and make it far too complicated, so I've broken it down to just two basic elements. You only need two things, and that is water and air. Because everything that you're putting into your compost heap is full of either water or is full of air, or it's tough enough to allow the air through the heap. So that's all you need, those two things. So air, what is air? It's the tough stuff that you get. So it's your tough stems of dry stalk. This time of year is perfect. We've got lots of overwintering plant matter on the allotment. That's all perfect. I've left it for the insects over winter. Hopefully they've all gone by now. So all these little hollow stems of dry stuff, it could be sawdust, it can be wood chippings, and the other main ingredient, of course, is water, and it's mostly the green stuff. So these materials are usually called in the books as greens and browns, and all we have to do, take my trusty salad bowl here, you usually start off with the tough stuff in the bottom of your bin, and then you layer it with your green stuff. There you go. Have a good old mix, Kez. The salad's like making a salad, really, isn't it?
Yummy. So what other things can we put in our compost? Can we put in food?
Well, you can put in food. We put in mainly things like peelings, banana skins, fruit peel, that kind of thing.
So any food that's not cooked.
Yeah,
so
not
if it's
cooked
cooked,
food.
it's a bit harder, isn't it? We have to make different kinds of compost.
Yeah, we're going to make we have to make a different kind of compost for that, really. Unless you want to, you've got to be very careful because you can attract rats and flies and you can smell. So as that starts to break down, and it's breaking down because of all the bacteria, so there's bacteria everywhere, and they start to get to work on this. As long as bacteria have got enough air and they've got enough water and it's warm enough, this is their food, this is what they'll eat, and but the main drivers for the first bit of the composting process. So every hour they can double. So one bacterial colony becomes 2 in an hour, then that becomes 4, and then it becomes 8, and that doubling and doubling and doubling goes on and on. So in 24 hours, that can get up to over 8 million.
Wow.
And that starts to generate the heat.
And what do we do with it once we've got this lovely mix? Do we put it in a bin?
You can put it in the most common thing to do is to put it in what we call a Dalek bin, those conical bins, those usually green or black bins that you can get. And it's perfect and try and fill it up in one go if you can, because it's good fun to make a hot bin.
And you can even just leave it in a pile, can't you?
You can just leave it in a pile on the ground, and that's great too, because that allows other creatures to come in. Slow worms, like we found yesterday on the allotment, we had a slow worm there. You'll get frogs and toads, and all sorts of creatures can come into your compost. And
provides a really good habitat, as well as being something that will turn into something useful for us in our kitchens.
It's a brilliant habitat, and I love looking at it because you can see, and if you can even just get a microscope or just magnifying glass, you can see an awful lot of creatures. There's tiny little things that look like little specks of dust sometimes that you see moving around, tiny little mites, and of course the worms that come in later. There's just so much life in there that you can see. You can see a lot with your own eyes. And if you get a little USB microscope and plug it into your phone or to your laptop, you can see an awful lot more.
Wow. So now we've shown you how you can make your own compost at home. We're going to take this up and put it on our own compost heap. Why don't you have a go at making your own compost, and also have a look at our other activities for this week. See if you can sow some of your own seeds and share any of the footage of you doing so with us